Have you ever woken up from a dream and it just felt so real it stayed with you like all
Oh,
day?
absolutely.
Imagine that dream, vivid and unsettling, but it keeps repeating,
Uh-huh.
like 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
And then imagine it leads you to a heartbreaking discovery.
Wow.
That's the story we're diving into today. It's a true story. It's called The Lost Children of the Alleghenies.
Okay.
And it's this tale that really blends like chilling mystery, heartwarming community spirit, and then a little dash of the unexplained.
It's a story that gets to the heart of what fascinates us about history, really. It's like this intersection of human experience and then, the unknown.
Yeah?
And it all unfolds against the backdrop of the Allegheny Mountains back in 1856. We've got firsthand accounts, newspaper clippings, and even some folklore kind of woven into this whole deep dive. It's a real window into a different time, a different way of life back then.
Okay, so paint the scene for us. It's April 24th, 1856, in Spruce Hollow, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Now, the Allegheny Mountains were even wilder back then, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're talking dense forests, steep ravines. Weather that could change in an instant.
Absolutely.
Even Charles Dickens, the famous author, found them a little bit unnerving when he traveled through just a few years prior.
Yeah, and that's important to keep in mind. The landscape itself plays a big role in this story.
Okay.
It wasn't a place that you could just, wander through, easily expect to find your way back. You really had to struggle.
Yeah. So into this setting comes the Cox family, right? Susanna and Samuel and their 2 young sons, George, who's 7, and Joseph, who is 5.
Right.
And they lived in a small cabin surrounded by this, vast, unforgiving wilderness. Can you even imagine raising children in that environment?
It would have been a life of both beauty and hardship, really.
Yeah.
The accounts we have describe a really close-knit community, people who relied on each other for survival.
Right.
But it was also a time when communication was limited. And that lack of, instant connection becomes a crucial factor in this whole story.
So the story starts on what seems like just an ordinary day. Samuel's having a meal, outside their cabin with his sons,
Okay.
when their dog suddenly takes off into the woods, barking like crazy.
And this is where things start to unravel a little bit. Samuel, thinking there might be something to hunt, he grabs his rifle and tells the boys that he's going after the dog. He figured, be back in a few minutes. It's a decision that, unfortunately, will haunt him for the rest of his life.
Yeah, because while Samuel's off chasing this dog, Susanna's inside the cabin, totally unaware that the boys have gone with their dad.
Right.
And Samuel assumes that they're safe back at the cabin with their mom.
It's a tragic miscommunication, and it's made even worse by the fact that there were no telephones, no way to quickly check in, call for him.
No way to connect instantly.
Nothing.
And so when Samuel gets back from the woods, he is met with this horrifying realization
Yeah.
that his sons are nowhere to be found.
It's the start of a frantic search.
No.
A desperate race against time in a landscape that offers as many hiding places as it does dangers. And as the hours turn into days, the entire community of Spruce Hollow rallies together to find these missing boys.
It says that there were over 200 people that joined the search effort. Men, women, even children, just combing the woods, calling out the boys' names. They were lighting torches as darkness fell.
Yeah.
They were determined to bring George and Joseph home.
And it's a real testament to the strength of that community, the way they came together in the face of this crisis.
Yeah.
But it's also a very poignant reminder of how vulnerable they were in that isolated environment.
Right.
Every passing day without a sign of those boys just deepened the fear and the uncertainty.
You can almost picture it, can't you? These flickering torches in the night, the sound of their voices just echoing through the trees, and just this, growing sense of dread as the search continues. And still, there's just no answers.
And as the days turn into weeks, a new and very unsettling element kind of enters the story.
Suspicion.
Suspicion.
Because as much as the community wanted to believe that there would be a happy ending, the lack of clues, the sheer impossibility of 2 young boys just vanishing in such a well-searched area, it really started to raise some questions.
Where could they be? Had they wandered off? Had they gotten lost? Had something worse happened? And if so, who was responsible?
Right.
It's a very natural human response to look for answers, to
Yeah.
try and make sense of something that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
But in this case, that search for an explanation, it led to a very dark turn.
Because that suspicion, unfortunately, started to fall on the parents themselves.
Susanna and Samuel, already just devastated by the loss of their children, now they had to endure accusations from their own neighbors.
Wow.
People who had stood by them in the search, shared meals with them, offered comfort. It's just heartbreaking. It's an illustration of how grief and fear can just twist even the strongest bonds.
So you got this massive community search. You've got a landscape that just seems to have swallowed these boys whole. You have the parents grappling with unimaginable loss and now accusations. And into all of this comes Jacob Dibert,
Right.
a local farmer.
Yes.
And he was deeply troubled by the boys' disappearance.
And Jacob's story is where this deep dive takes a really fascinating turn.
Okay.
He's not a detective, he's not a psychic, he's not a mystic or anything. He's just a really hardworking man who finds himself at the center of something extraordinary. What makes Jacob's story so compelling is it speaks to something many of us have experienced, and that's the power of dreams. We've all had those dreams that feel so real that just linger with us long after we wake up.
Oh, absolutely. Dreams that feel more real than actual life.
Yes, yes. But in Jacob's case, it wasn't just like the vividness of the dream. It was the fact that it repeated. And it was the details within it that made it so unsettling. This wasn't just some fleeting image or some vague feeling. The sources describe it as incredibly specific, like Jacob sees this dead deer, a log that's fallen over a stream, even a child's shoe,
Wow.
all leading to a very distinctive birch tree. And at the base of that tree, huddled together, are George and Joseph.
Okay, so it's like straight out of movie. I mean, you can imagine how disturbing that would be. You wake up from that dream and those images are just burned into your mind.
Absolutely. And according to the accounts, Jacob, he initially tried to just dismiss it. He was a practical man, not prone to, like, flights of fancy. And yet this dream, this vision, it kept coming back.
The first night, he has this incredibly detailed dream. And then the next night, the exact same dream repeats. I mean, that would be unnerving, to say the least.
Imagine the growing sense of unease. The first time, okay, you might just brush it off, but the second time, those doubts start to creep in.
Right.
And then the most chilling part, the dream returns for a third night in a row.
3 nights. At that point, you got to start wondering if it's more than just some, like, random dream.
Yeah, it's a pivotal moment. Even Jacob's wife, who initially had told him to just ignore it, she starts to feel like it's a sign, like a message trying to break through.
I can see why they'd be hesitant to share it with anyone, though.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's 1856. People didn't exactly go around talking about psychic dreams.
Think about the context here. This is a time when superstition and folklore were very, deeply intertwined with everyday life. But there was also this strong current of skepticism, a belief in logic and reason. To come forward with a story like that, especially in the midst of a tragedy like this, I mean, it would have been very risky.
Yeah. They could have been dismissed as crazy or worse, accused of trying to profit from the situation.
Absolutely. And yet the weight of those 3 dreams, the sheer specificity of those details, it became too much for Jacob to ignore. He had to act. So he confided in his brother-in-law, Harrison Weissong, a man he trusted, someone who knew the area as well as he did.
And this is where the story takes another kind of unexpected turn.
Yeah.
Because as Jacob's describing this location from his dream, it triggers a memory for Harrison.
It's a moment of pure serendipity.
Yeah.
The details Jacob describes, the birch tree, the fallen log, the stream, they all match a place both men knew from their childhood, a spot several miles from the Cox cabin.
What are the odds of that?
I know.
It's like all the pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicking into place.
It's just this incredible coincidence that gives Jacob that final push that he needs.
Right.
Armed with this newfound conviction, he and Harrison set out for the location from the dream. And what they find is both a confirmation and a tragedy.
They actually find everything just as it had appeared in the dream. The dead deer, the log over the stream, even that child's shoe. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
It's just this chilling validation. Every detail, every image from Jacob's dream is there in reality. And at the base of that oddly shaped birch tree, just as he had seen in his dreams, they find the bodies of George and Joseph.
Wow. It must have been such a mix of emotions, Relief at finally knowing what happened to those boys, but also immense sorrow at finding them gone. And then I imagine, a whole new wave of questions.
It's a discovery that just sends shockwaves through the community. Those who had been skeptical of Jacob's dream, now they have to confront its undeniable accuracy. The suspicion that had been directed at the parents, it evaporates. and it's replaced by a shared grief and a sense of awe at the seemingly inexplicable.
It must have been such a strange and powerful moment, for everyone involved. The tragedy, it had been resolved, but the mystery, that still remained.
Yeah.
How could Jacob's dream have been so accurate?
Right.
What does it tell us about, like, the power of the human mind or about our connection to the world around us?
The story doesn't give us easy answers. And I think that's part of its enduring appeal. It really challenges our understanding of what we think we know about, reality, about perception, about the boundaries of human experience.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in the face of, logic and reason, there are things that we may never fully comprehend.
Right.
And that's where the story could end it.
Right. Yeah.
Just a tragic mystery forever shrouded in speculation. But there's one more layer to this whole deep dive.
Oh.
A twist that adds another dimension to the idea of these precognitive dreams in the Dybert family.
Okay.
It's almost like an echo, like a ripple effect from that original tragedy. 25 years later, in 1887, another person goes missing in the same area where the Cox boys were found.
Wow.
Her name was Sidney Griffith. And the community, haunted by the memory of those lost children, once again, they rallied together to search for her.
So imagine a community that's already scarred by this tragic disappearance, and now they're facing a similar situation. Those old fears and anxieties, they're all coming back to the surface. It must have felt like history was repeating itself.
Absolutely.
And just when hope starts to kind of dwindle, a familiar name emerges. Isaac Dybert,
Okay.
Jacob's son.
Oh.
He steps forward with a claim that just sends chills down the spines of those who remember the story of the lost children.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that he also had a dream? Like father, like son. That's incredible and a little spooky, too.
It certainly adds another layer of intrigue to this whole story, doesn't it? And just like his father's dream, Isaac's was incredibly specific. He saw this vision of Sydney alive but injured in a particular location.
Is it pan out?
Skepticism, of course, ran really high, but given the history, given what had happened with Jacob and the Cox boys, people were willing to listen.
Yeah, so they followed the clues in Isaac's dream
And they found Sidney Griffith exactly where Isaac's dream had shown her. Alive.
Wow.
Injured, but alive.
Incredible.
It was just this remarkable echo of his father's experience. And it really solidified the Dybert family name in the local lore as possessing this unique and uncanny ability.
2 generations, 2 missing persons cases, 2 dreams that led to their resolution. It's definitely a story that stays with you. It makes you wonder if there's more to the world than we can, see or explain. It's almost like the landscape itself, those rugged mountains and dense forests, hold some kind of hidden knowledge, something that whispers to certain people in their dreams.
It's a reminder that while we strive to understand the world through logic and reason, there are aspects of the human experience that may always remain a mystery.
Yeah.
And that perhaps that's okay.
Right.
Perhaps there's beauty and wonder in embracing the unknown and acknowledging that there are forces at work that we may never fully comprehend.
I love how this deep dive has taken us beyond the historical facts and into the realm of speculation and possibility. It's a story that has so many layers. The tragedy, the community spirit, the mystery of those dreams. And it leaves us with so many questions to ponder, questions about the nature of reality, the power of the human mind, the enduring echoes of these events that they defy easy explanation.
It reminds us that history is more than just dates and facts. It's about the human stories, the emotions, the mysteries that shape our understanding of the world and our place in it.
This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. If you're as fascinated by this story as we are, we encourage you to kind of delve a little deeper. We'll provide links to some of the sources that we used, as well as information on the folklore surrounding the lost children of the Alleghenies. And if you have any thoughts or insights that you'd like to share, we would love to hear from you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those dreams coming. Who knows what they might reveal?